really sorry about that. All right, well, it is 12:03, so I apologize for everyone getting kicked off. I had somebody else using my Zoom account, and we were butting up against each other. So we should be good going forward here. So in case you don't recognize my voice by now, this is Michelle McNerney with IWD. And thank you for coming to our office hours calls today. It's been a month since we last chatted on one of these calls, but lots has been happening, so that's exciting. And I have a couple of things that I'm going to share with you today, and then I think we'll have some time for questions at the end. Remember, if you have questions throughout the call, if you've dialed in by phone, you just have to press *6 to unmute yourself. If you are on the computer, just make sure that you stay muted. That'll help us all keep the background noise down, and you can unmute yourself at any time if you do have a question. So I am going to go ahead and get started here. So my contact information, just in case you don't have it by now. And just a reminder why we're having these calls, it's really just an opportunity for us to continually engage and be able to ask questions and provide some answers, and just provide an opportunity for you all to meet and connect with each other as well and learn from each other. So today, some of the objectives that we're going to go over, I have some updated guidance on the funding for one-stop operators that I'm going to cover. I have a transition plan for the outgoing service providers, which I know doesn't apply to all of you today, but will apply to all of you eventually at some point, maybe. So we're going to go over that and get some feedback, and then I will finalize that document and get it sent out today or first thing Monday morning. I also want to give some updated information on the process for extending the existing contracts for those of you that are doing that in your local areas. And then again, any questions that you might have going forward. So just as a quick reminder to look at the dates for the key tasks. Again, we've pushed back the deadlines for some of these key tasks, and every local area is really in a different spot for where they're at with the development and the process of getting these tasks in place, which is perfectly acceptable. So reminder that most of those deadlines have been pushed back to September 1st for you to have all of those things in place. If you can get all those things in place by September 1st, that'll set you up to a really good position to be able to complete a request for proposal for service providers to be in place on January 1st, which is when the contract extensions would end. So that's the goal that we're working towards, and we will continue to work towards those goals. So let's start with updates for the one-stop operator. So if you remember way back to the fall when we first started doing our training, there are really 4 main roles within the local workforce governance structure. There's the fiscal agent, board staff, one-stop operator, and then the service providers, right? And if you remember, we gave you a chart that looked like this, and we talked about of the overall funding, there's a 10% cap that can be used for administration, and then the 90%, the remaining 90% is programmatic in nature. So one of the things, and we got a question from Miranda, so thank you, Miranda, for keeping us on our toes. We really looked into this, and initially this looked a little bit different, because initially what we told you had to come out of the administrative costs, 10%, was the fiscal agent, the staff to the board, and the one-stop operator costs. Well, if you notice, I've updated this chart to show you that the vast majority of the one-stop operator costs will most likely be programmatic. So I've moved it from the administrative piece of the pie to the programmatic piece of the pie. So that's a good thing, right? Because that frees up some additional administrative dollars for you all to use for other things. There is a possibility that some of the one-stop operator costs could end up being administrative, depending on what role you choose to give the one-stop operator in your local area. So we can work through those things individually as we need to. But for now, you know, it's pretty safe bet that most of the costs for the one-stop operator will be programmatic. So I think I can pause there and just see if anybody does have any questions. Whoa, what did I just do? Okay, doesn't sound like it. So that's a really pretty simple update and is good news for everybody. So I will move on to the next section of our, oops. presentation. Okay, so outgoing service provider transition guidance. So I am going to switch out of the PowerPoint here in a second and pull up a document for us to go over, but I just want to give a couple of bullet points first. So at this point, all of the existing old local areas have been in contact and told me their plans, whether they are extending existing service provider contracts, or they've appointed somebody, or in one case, they're doing an RFP currently, right? So again, everybody's kind of doing something a little bit different. So I just wanted to talk about, for the people that are extending the existing service provider contracts, remember, those contracts are not fundamentally correct for the governance structure. So doing that is a good thing because it does two things, right? It's gonna allow us to ensure that service provision continues on July 1, and it buys you more time to meet those goals of getting the right people and the right roles in place by September 1st and completing those tasks so that by January 1st, you're truly completely compliant at a governance level. So extending those service provider contracts essentially is extending them acting as your fiscal agent as well, right? So I just wanted to make sure and point that out after some conversations I've had this week with different local areas and talking through some things. So if you don't have a fiscal agent in place right now, that's okay if you're going to be extending your service provider contracts, because you do have somebody fulfilling that role for you. So it buys you that time to work on that and move forward. When those contracts are continued and extended with the modification through December 31st, so they're going to continue those roles they currently fill. At the same time, you should be working to appoint a fiscal agent and have one in place by September 1st. So when you do this, there is going to be some overlap of this fiscal agent role in these local areas, but that's okay. And as we work through this on an individual basis with the different local areas, we will figure out what that looks like. And we'll touch base more on that at the end of the presentation today. But for now, I'm just going to jump out of this presentation and show you a different document. So can you all see the Word document on my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So I've been working with Mayor this week to put together a document that will be sent out to the service providers that are leaving, that are ending their service provision as of June 30th. And so this is the chart for the areas that's happening at based off the information that I have. If you in your local area see something different for your local area, please let me know right away and I will get this updated. But this document will be sent to the service providers that are outgoing, as well as you all and the operations managers of the Iowa Works offices, so that everybody has the same information and can communicate about this. But it's gonna walk you through the different pieces that need to be handled to transition the outgoing service provider out. The first part here covers the case files. So it's going to talk about making sure that all active WIO participant case files are located at the office and they're there by the end of June 30th when the contract ends. So this chart will just say who that provider is that's outgoing, where the AJC is, and who a contact person is at that office to be able to make sure that the files are in the right place and available for the incoming service provider, okay? Also talks about inactive participant files. And so those will need to be boxed up and also located at the Iowa Works Center or AJC by the end of the month, so that they can still be accessed. They may be needed to be accessed for monitoring purposes, auditing purposes, things like that. So they will need to be maintained.
Hey, Michelle, this is Kyle.
Yeah.
On that point, I believe ours are in file cabinets at the office. Is that acceptable, or do they need to be boxed up specifically?
I mean, I think that's something that you guys can work out, and they can work out with the AJC and the center staff. Mike, do you have any other thoughts on that? I think as long as they're there, Kyle, that's good.
Yeah, as long as they're in the center and identified and in the cabinets, I think that's fine.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep. The other important piece about the participant files is all of the tracking that's used for the financial information and the services that are being provided. A lot of that stuff is in the Iowa Works data management system, but nothing financial is tracked within that system. So that's all done externally, and every service provider probably does it a little bit differently through some sort of Excel spreadsheets or tracking mechanism. So they're gonna need to make sure that those are up to date and make sure that all of that information is sent in so that we can pass that on to the incoming service provider so that those participants don't notice, they might hopefully notice a little bump in the road, but nothing more than that, right? We don't want the services that they're currently getting stopping because the service provider is changing. So they'll have to provide all of that information. Your service provider knows what that is, and they know how they track it, and they know what they will need to send over. So again, just giving some dates and information about where to send this. It says my name right now. I'm not sure we'll leave it that way because that's gonna be a lot of information. So I might, quickly before I send this out, put like a Google Drive folder that they can dump everything into, and then I can share it with the incoming service provider. So I might tweak that part of this document. Also, one of the other things that we think is important is that the outgoing service providers don't make any new participant obligations past the middle of June. That will just help to ensure that transition and also help to make sure that the funding is, there's kind of a stopping point, right? So that it can be transitioned to the new person. If this is a date that you think needs to be sooner or later, for your specific area, then we can definitely do that and talk about that. So one of the other points that'll be really important is access to the data management system, the iowaworks.gov system. So at this point in time, we will plan on shutting down access to all of the outgoing service providers at the end of the day on June 30th, which is their last day as a service provider. You know, that's important because there's a lot of PII, personally identifiable information within that system that we would want to make sure people don't have access to. We will leave the Title I director, so the person that's leading the service provider in your area, we will leave them with view-only access to the system because they might need it as they help to work through the closeout of the grant information. So, and then obviously this is something that if things need to be changed or updated, there just needs to be communication between the service provider and our staff at IWD, and we will make sure that they have everything they need to get the records in the best shape possible to be able to pass those along. So there is also some specific records retention language in the current contracts that the service providers have, so they can, it's mentioned here in the document, so they know where to reference to find that information. And then there's the actual fiscal grant closeout that has to happen, which again is already listed as part of the contract, so that language is in here. But then also some additional detailed information about the system that they use for the financial reporting, which is the TM1 system. So again, we will leave access for those people acting in that fiscal agent capacity to have that through August 15th so that they can complete the grant closeout. And they will have to do their final monthly expenditure report for the month of June by July 20th, just like normal. And then we would deal with any unexpected return of funds or new funds needed as those issues arise. So additionally, there are leases and subleases surrounding the space in the workforce offices that will need to be dealt with. So I have gathered that information up today, and I'm going to be sending out some individualized emails to all of you, including your service providers, this afternoon, that will say what needs to happen in regards to the building leases in your location, because again, in every local area, it is different. So it's just easier to send individualized emails about that. Carryover funds is another thing that, and we're going to hit on this a little bit more later on in the presentation as well, but it's something that we will have to monitor, and then I will work with you all individually to decide how you want to handle the carryover funds. For the providers that are leaving, essentially what will happen is whatever funds are left over that would be carried over into the second year of the grant, we will get back from the provider when the grant is closed out, and then we'll put it into contract with the new provider. So again, we will be talking about that a little bit more here at the end of the presentation today. So the other major issue is property and equipment, which is also covered in the IWD contract with the service provider. And it basically says that any equipment that's purchased with Title I funds belongs to the program and needs to be surrendered by the outgoing provider. That way it'll be available for the new incoming provider as well. So I have, I'm working with our IT department, who should have an inventory list of all of the computers and things like that, to be able to provide to the service providers so that we can make sure that we have that equipment available for the incoming service provider. And then another thing that we'll have to do is work with the IT team at IWD, who supports all of the IT efforts throughout the AJCs, including the Title I staff, to get access to the incoming service providers and to make sure they have everything that they need. So this is going to be a little bit weird because of COVID and because most staff are currently working remotely. So again, there's going to be some, we're going to have to work that out, I guess, individually. This letter says that they need to deliver it no later than June 26th. But I also know that they will have a need to continue to work through June 30th. So with Mike's team, you know, most of you know, I believe that the AJCs are currently not fully open to the public, and most staff are working remotely from the Title I service provider perspective. Is that right, Mike?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. So we'll have to work that out in each individual location between Mike's team and the service provider. So we'll start working on that with them as well. There's also going to be an audit provision that's part of the contract that will still have to be able to be completed by the outgoing provider. So that's referenced for the contract. And then this another section is regarding Creative Commons license. So any materials, you know, pamphlets, brochures, marketing materials, things like that, that were developed using the Title I funds are the property of WIOA and not the provider themselves. So they will need to make sure that we have access to all of those documents to be able to give them over to the new service provider as well. Realistically, all materials that are being created in the local areas should be created under the, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Under the
Iowa Works.
Yes, thank you, Mike. The Iowa Works logo, and just that's how they should be marketed, right? There shouldn't be anything specific to a service provider. So there really should be no, the transition should be pretty smooth from that regard, but those are some things that we'll just have to gather up and make sure that everything's on the same page and can be easily transferred to the new providers. And then the other thing I think that's very important is making sure that we're communicating to the participants that this change is happening, but that it won't have an effect on their services or anything like that, that they might have to talk to somebody new to get those services, but their services shouldn't change. So I have some draft language for that as well that I can send out that you can use, or if you would want to come up with that on your own, I suppose that would be fine. But just making sure that that communication goes out to participants so that they understand that while the change is happening, there should be no change to their services. So that covers everything in this document. Does anybody have any questions?
Michelle, this is Heather Garcia. Will you be sharing these pages with us?
Yep.
Perfect.
I have it in a draft form here today for us to review because I just wanted to make sure there was nothing glaring that we've left off that you all have thought of that we needed to add before we finalize it. It'll get finalized today and I'll send it out to all of you. and including your service providers in your local area. So like for you, Heather, in region, or in central Iowa, nothing's changing. This isn't a document you need right now, but come December after an RFP, if the service provider were to change, then you would need to use this document. So.
Yep. Perfect.
But
Yeah.
yep, I'm
And
going to send it out.
fantastic. Thanks, Michelle.
Yep.
Hey, Michelle, this is Kyle.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm on mute.
Okay. Is there anything specific that you will need the service providers to put all these documents on? Is it going to be in a Google Drive or flash drives or whatever? And are you providing that, or do they need to get that? Just a couple things I thought of.
Most likely a Google Drive. Honestly, when I was going over this with Mike about 4 minutes before we got on this call, and he recommended that, so I didn't have time to get it created and put in the document, but I'm going to do that when we're done.
Okay.
Just because he reminded me that would probably be quite a few emails coming into my already very full inbox. So, but yeah, we'll put together the Google Drive and give everybody access that needs it to be able to just drop it in there instead of having to email it to anybody.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there are no other questions about this document, I'm going to switch back into the, oh shoot, I did not mean to do that from the beginning. Hold on 1 second. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. Okay, are you guys back to seeing the PowerPoint presentation?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, perfect. All right, so CLIO meetings regarding the budget. Okay, so I am feverishly working on getting the PY20 allotments ready right now. And I am planning on having that available next week. And so one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule meetings with each of your local areas individually. And it will probably be short notice because I want to get those done as quickly as possible so that you have as much time as possible to plan for budgeting. But I also am still working with the Department of Labor to make sure that we're doing the allocations exactly right based off the changes in the borders, okay? So at those meetings, who should be present? You all as the CLIOs, and if you have a local board chair that's in place that is able to, help you out with this process, you are more than welcome to invite your local board chair as well. And what we're going to do is talk through what those contract extensions look like and what amount of funding you want to put into those contracts. So let me give you one example. And I know I've met with many of you and talked over expenditures in the past few weeks. And one of the things that I talked about is that the funding comes in program year that starts July 1st and also federal fiscal year that starts 10/1, right? So for the youth money comes all at once at the program year. So on July 1st, if your local area is eligible for $100,000 in youth funding, you get all of that on July 1st, okay? For the providers that are staying for that youth money, their extension is only through December 31st of 2020 right now because you have to go through that RFP process. So do you want me to put that full $100,000 into contract with them? I would think not, but that's going to be an individual decision that you all have to make. So I want to walk you through that on an individual basis per local area so that we can have those conversations and you can tell me and how much of that money should go into contract for these contract extensions, right? If you're a local area that's doing something a little bit different, like for, Mississippi Valley, you guys are doing the RFP right now, it's going to be a completely different process, but we'll get together, we'll talk about that, right? Let's see here. Kyle, you guys up in Northwest Iowa, yours is a little bit different as well because you have a fiscal agent in place and you have a newly appointed provider. So we're going to do it a little bit differently there too. But so it's hard to talk about that here because everybody is a little bit different. So I'm going to get those meetings scheduled and we will talk that through hopefully next week. And again, I will probably be contacting you and not giving you a ton of notice. And I really apologize about that. I'll make it work for your schedules as best as possible. If we need to meet at 7 o'clock at night, we can do that. And so that we can get those PY20 funding allotments out and also discuss the carryover funding from PY19 and what that looks like and sort of go from there. So this is more of a kind of a next step, but I just wanted you to be aware that that is a pretty crucial next step that we need to take care of here within the next couple of weeks. And then the remainder of the next steps, the next thing that I'm going to be tackling with Mayor and Mayor is a fiscal agent agreement template. And so that's something I think, Lori, we talked about trying to get done next week or as soon as possible to get out to you all. And the fiscal agent agreement, just as a reminder, is something that the fiscal agent, the CLIO, and the board chair will sign, which very clearly details out what the fiscal agent responsibilities are going to be. Because the fiscal agent responsibilities can range greatly per area depending on how you want to utilize them. So we're going to put a template together for you all to use and get that out to you as soon as possible as well. The other thing that is coming up is fiscal agent training. So there is fiscal agent training scheduled in June for the 2 local areas that have designated fiscal agents. Doug, I see you're on the call, and I know you sent me an email, and I have a draft ready to come back to you so we can chat about your situation. And so that's going to be happening in June for the fiscal agents that are ready to go to start July 1st, okay? For the rest of you all, that does not mean you have to rush to try to get a fiscal agent in place because, again, extending the existing service provider contract also extends their role as a fiscal agent for your area. So there's not necessarily a need right now. We will be planning and scheduling additional fiscal agent trainings once everybody has that fiscal agent in place and everyone's local area and everyone's fiscal agent will get the same training, okay? So I just want you to be aware that that's out there and available, and we will get those scheduled when we have the rest of the fiscal agents in place. And on top of that is local board training. And I think if you remember back to January when we didn't know COVID-19 existed, we were planning on doing local board training in person across the state during actually next week, the first week of June. And that kind of got the kibosh because of travel and things like that. And then we also shifted gears and realized that the fiscal agent training probably needed to come first. So I just wanted to let you know that local board training is still part of our contract with Mayor and Mayor. We will still be completing that. We just needed to get through a couple of these other things first. So I would say right now, we're probably looking towards August or September to do the local board training for everyone. So comprehensive local board training to follow as well. I think that was everything on my list. Any questions?
Michelle, I don't have a question, but can I make a comment about the local board training?
Please do.
So just so you all are aware and you can just keep it tucked in the back of your minds, the local board training, as of right now, we're preparing it to be done virtually, and it will be done 9 different times. So there will be a training per local board. And you all as elected officials will absolutely be included on that information, and you'll be welcome to attend as well. But I just wanted you all to know what the structure was going to be. We think, if we were doing this live face-to-face, I guess, having the local boards together, local board members together would be a really good synergy in the room. We realize that's a little bit changed whenever we're virtually, but we'll try and make it as interactive as we can. But you all will be divided by the new 9 local areas for training.
Thanks, Lori.
Yep.
Any other questions I can answer today about anything?
Michelle, with the fiscal agent, so for those regions that are extending the contracts through December 31st, We in Region 11, or the Central Iowa local area, we're looking to onboard and have the fiscal agent start January 1st. Is that with your timeline too? Does that fit?
Well, I think actually, Heather, you would want to get them on board before January 1st, right? Because
Yeah.
part of the, and so that deadline really is supposed to be September 1st at this point.
Yep.
To have them on board, and then they would take over doing the majority of the fiscal agent duties for January 1. Yes.
Perfect.
There's going to be a little bit of overlap, right? So let me see if I can, I've had to say this out loud so many times to myself so that I can make sure that I get it right. But so let's say we put, you know, $40,000 into contract with DMAC for the adult DW services, right? So that would come with some administrative funds, like the 10%, let's say $4,000 they could use for admin. That's not the whole pot of admin for the Central Iowa Local Workforce Development Area, right? So when the fiscal agent does get put in place, let's say the remaining of that money, it was the $100,000 for the year. We gave DMAC 40 on July 1. When the fiscal agent gets put in place on September 1st, IWD can go ahead and contract that money, the remainder, the $60,000, to the fiscal agent, right? The fiscal agent would then have access to the administrative part of that money, so $6,000, okay, right? The 10% of the 60. And then they would just hold the programmatic funding until it was time to put that into contract with our competitively procured service provider that will take over on January 1, which very well could be DMAC, right? But that's sort of how I envision that flow happening. Does that make sense? Number one. And Lori, number two, did I say that correctly? Or two, then one, whichever.
I think you caught her with her mouth full. We're both nodding to you. That's
Okay.
exactly what we had in mind, so that's perfect. Thanks.
Perfect. I'm sorry. I can't see you guys for some reason. The way that I have this presenting, I can't see anybody, so I don't know what's going on out there. Thank you.
It looked like Miranda had a
Oh,
question in the
I can
chat,
see
and then
that.
I have a couple of others, but I don't want to take over. So Miranda, you have the.
Yeah, I see that, Miranda. So actually, I know I got your email, and I'm not ignoring you. I promise. I know it seems like I'm always ignoring you guys. I actually talked to Region 5 DOL about that this morning again, just to make sure. So I'm working on that, and I hope to have an answer for you. If not today, then Monday. So I'm working on it.
Michelle, this is Heather again. With the youth RFP, are you going to put together a template for the youth RFP?
Yes, I am.
I'm sorry. I know you're
No,
super busy, and
you're good. You guys, and look, I can't even speak complete sentences because my mind is so crazy. My days consist basically of shifting around which of the top 5 priorities is the top priority that day. And so it's about halfway done. And because that's something that Mayor Lori has been working with me diligently on too. So we are getting there, and we'll hopefully have one soon. But thankfully, unless anybody has any different plans, let me know. You won't be RFPing, really for a couple more months. So we have some time, but it is absolutely still on the radar, and we are absolutely still going to provide that for you. And then what we'll do once we have the youth one done as well, we will make one that's a combination. So it's all adult DW youth together if that's the route that you choose to go.
With the one-stop operator, since that goes through a procurement also, my original plan was to do that RFP first. Of course, with the changes and everything, I'm worried that we might not have anybody that wants to take on the one-stop operator. And isn't there an option to roll ROLL, that ROLE roll into the service provider RFP?
Following you. Yes, absolutely. You can combine the procurement for the one-stop operator into the procurement for the service provider. Absolutely. One of the things I will say about the one-stop operator, and So I would ask you to hold off on that a little bit, just because right now there is no policy for you to procure from, right?
Mhm.
And the reason is that is not solely up to IWD. The role of the one-stop operator covers all of the core programs in WIOA. So that's Title I, Title II, which is adult education and literacy, Title III, the Wagner-Pizer that IWD works on, and then Title IV, voc rehab services. So all of those core partners together have to determine what the one-stop operator expectations and criteria are in the state of Iowa. We at the state level have a core partner policy group that is tasked with doing all of those things, writing those joint policies. And that is also something that is on our to-do list. But unfortunately, as I'm sure you know, all of us have been just totally hard right turned due to COVID and haven't been able to work on that. But we know that that's something that needs to happen pretty quickly so that you all can do what you need to do in order to do the RFP for the one-stop operator. So I would say yes to your question is absolutely correct. You can roll those together. And two, hopefully we will have guidance out for you within the next couple of months or how to do that, because you need that criteria of what the one-stop operator is going to do in order to be able to RFP for it.
Just to follow up with that, because I know after talking to some county supervisors, they really like to do things quickly and efficiently. And I'm sure some of them heard us talk about rolling the one-stop operator in with another RFP. The one-stop operator has to go through 2 procurement processes before they can be rolled into another, don't they? Doesn't it?
It sounds like you know the policy off the top of your head better than I do. I would have to go back and double check
I was
what the
going to ask
policy
that
says.
too.
I'm pretty certain that the one-stop operator procurement process has to be attempted twice with no applicants before it can be rolled into a service provider RFP. So I just want to caution anybody that thinks, oh, goody, we can reduce it down to 1 RFP and be done. I don't think that's the case with the policy.
Yeah. And all I can say is, I know, Wendy, you're on the phone, and if you know and can chime in, please do. But all I can say is, I do know that it is very clearly lined out in the policy that's on the e-policy manual site that will answer that question for sure. So, but yes.
Hi,
Okay.
this is Wendy. I'm looking at the policy right now, and I will provide it into the chat window.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Wendy.
Thank you.
Any other questions anybody have today?
I have one more, and you're going to love this one. With the MOU that expires June 30th, what advice do you have about the MOU process and where we should go with the with that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I mean, these are great questions, Heather, and it's you know, they're all pieces to the puzzle. I will tell you that last year we received not an official waiver, but DOL allowed us to extend those MOUs through June 30th of 2020. I believe expecting that we'd be much farther along in this current process than we are. So I need to go back to them, and they're well aware. I mean, I converse with them on a weekly basis about our progress and what we're working on. So they're well aware of where we're at. But I do need to bring that back up with them and see what we can do. You know, I will tell you that, and as we discussed last year at this time with the service providers, the MOUs are not compliant. So we can sign them and extend them, which is a great thing, just to make sure that all the partners, you know, are still committed and still fulfilling their roles and things like that. But realistically, it's not a compliant MOU anyway. And so we will have to get to the point where we overhaul that MOU. And that includes what's referred to as an infrastructure funding agreement, which is, you know, the law really outlines how all of the partners are supposed to pay to contribute to that one-stop system in each local area. And that is another piece that the core partner team is tackling. And I will tell you, it is probably the most difficult part. And some of you are probably out there saying infrastructure funding agreement. I've never heard of that before. And that's because we've intentionally never mentioned it before because we needed to get all these other pieces in place first. So thanks for the reminder. I'll reach out to DOL and figure out what we need to do on the MOUs and hopefully maybe even get those extended again. And then we can work on getting compliant MOUs in place in all of the local areas.
Do you think it's likely you would be requesting the MOUs be signed before July 1st?
If we're going to extend them, we would want to do it before July 1st. Yeah.
Okay. And an aside, thank you so much for getting back to us so quickly with the shared liability agreement. I'm guessing that might be one of the longest shared liability agreements in the country that we have in central Iowa. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think at this point, everybody who's asked for feedback on one has received it, but if you haven't, please let me know. I think I've gotten everybody's at this point, so. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay. Wendy, I haven't seen a response in the chat. Were you able to find the issue or the answer about the procurement yet? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Nope, that's okay. Yeah, I was actually just looking into that, and that policy outlines with the 2 attempts, it's in regards to sole source. So it says sole source must only be pursued after a minimum of 2 attempts to competitively procure, including 1 attempt that combines the procurement of the one-stop operator with the selection of the adult and dislocated worker service provider. I'll put that in the chat too. So,
so basically you can procure it separately right away and or combined. You just
right.
you can't move straight to a sole source for the one-stop operator until you've at least attempted once of doing it with the procurement of the provider, service providers.
So would it work to do a combined procurement right off the bat, or does a separate one just for the one-stop operator have to be done first?
I think it could be combined right off the bat. Lori, do you know, or I can look into it and send an email out?
I think these may be Iowa specific parameters that you all put in. The only federal perspective I can give is that the USDOL has been very clear that there has to be attempts at competitive procurement. And when things get in the way of that, such as not receiving bids or only receiving one, they've been, because that's not a competition if you've only received one in their interpretation. So they've just been clear about that. So I think what you all are talking about here have been some Iowa specific things. So it would just be based on any Iowa code issues that may exist or whatnot.
Sorry, mute button not working. Okay, perfect. I'll look into that and send it out, Heather.
Thanks a lot. I think those are all my questions, so thank you.
I will add one other thing. This isn't a question that was asked, but it's just for perspective. It's very common across the country to see a service provider who is also the one-stop operator. That's very common to see. And then that happens in a couple of ways. It can happen through a combined procurement or through 2 different procurements that don't limit who can apply. So I don't know that there's any noted benefit to doing it one way or the other. So it would just come down to the decision making of the local workforce board with the agreement of the CLIO on that matter.
Okay, last call for any questions? Doesn't sound, I don't see any in the chat and nobody's piping up. So hopefully it is as gorgeous at your house today as it is at mine and you'll be able to enjoy the weekend. I do just want to tell you one more thing that I'm going to get ready to send out to you probably on Monday is the quarterly performance data for all the local areas and the state, which is also something probably new to many of you. So I will plan on pulling that up and reviewing it with you at the next office hours calls, which will be 2 weeks from today on June 12th. And so I'll send that out ahead of time and you can have some chance to look it over, and then we can kind of go over it as well too, because that's some other information that will start to become very important to you as leaders of the local areas, the local workforce boards, as well as understanding what the performance data looks like and how you're faring in meeting those expectations. So with that, I will end today's call. Thank you all for joining, and I will talk to you soon.